Then Sports Central beginning, guys, our Week 15 college football rankings for this 2024 college football season. The regular season is wrapped up, and we'll be talking about where things stand here today as we look forward to Conference Championship Week. So with that, let's get started with 1 through 7. Oregon number 1 this week beat Washington 49-21. The one undefeated team in the regular season, the Oregon Ducks. Most would say at this point, this is probably your national favorite, but I'll say this as well. You look at Texas, who was right behind them. Texas lost to Georgia, and that was a pretty ugly loss there. Thing is, they got a rematch this week. We'll see where Texas really is at this current point this upcoming week. And, based on the way this team looked against Texas A&M going on the road there, a huge rivalry matchup and a really brutal place to play. Texas looked, this was a really dominant team, especially in the first half. The second half, a few mistakes. But, at this point, I feel like Oregon and Texas, these are your two best teams in the country at this current point. And, it's honestly hard to say that, though. Penn State, Notre Dame, the way those two teams have played as well, this is a very wide-open season at this current point, much more so in comparison to the last few years. I feel like once we get to this 12-team playoff, what a season for it, because I feel like, honestly, if whoever gets in the playoff truly does have a legit chance of winning it all. Even though 4 teams have the first-round bye, I wouldn't be surprised if your national champion came out of the first round of the playoff. That's just the way that this season feels. Just such a wild season in general. Texas 11-1 on the season, beat Texas A&M on the road, a huge win. Penn State number 3 beat Maryland 44-7. Penn State won losses to Ohio State, and this is, Penn State's been waiting for this because, the last couple of years, Penn State's been really good. Their problem is they've been overshadowed by Michigan and Ohio State. They haven't had a chance to play for a Big Ten title. So this is a massive opportunity here for Penn State to take advantage of what has been, once again, another great season for the Nittany Lions. Number 4, Notre Dame beat USC 49-35. Notre Dame's a kind of a polarizing team because everyone looks at 11-1, their one loss to Northern Illinois. But I will say this about Notre Dame. That NIU loss was a long time ago. That was back in September. I understand that. That loss still counts on Notre Dame's resume. But with how many teams, how many 2-loss teams? We got 3 2-loss teams in this top 7. Only one team was undefeated this season. And yeah, that NIU loss is by far the worst loss of any of the teams up here. You look at how Notre Dame has responded to that loss. That's really what matters in my eyes. And Notre Dame has really come a long ways this season. This is a really strong team, and both offensively and defensively. They did allow 35 points to USC there, but this team has been consistently good this season. Notre Dame is a sneaky team, not being in a conference, but I think honestly Notre Dame could really make a run for a national title this season. No one's talking about them, but this is a really good football team in the Irish. Number 5 is Georgia, beat Georgia Tech in 8 overtimes, 44-42, a 10-2 team that's really had a roller coaster of a year. The preseason national favorite. That's why I think Georgia is still dangerous. This is a talented team that's just been inconsistent. If things can start to click here for Georgia, if they can win this weekend and head into the playoff with some strong momentum, this is a really dangerous Georgia team, despite being a bit inconsistent this season and having 2 losses at this current point. Ohio State number 6, the loss to Michigan 10-13, obviously a really brutal one there. Ohio State is such a talented team. That's why this has been a bit of a letdown season, being a 10-2 team at this current point, and Michigan is definitely a team that Ohio State should have beat this season. So for Ohio State, how is this team going to respond to this? They should obviously still be a college football playoff team. They just might have a bit of a tougher road, but this just feels like a very significant time for Ohio State, being such a talented team this season that just has really not been as dominant as many thought they would be. Tennessee number 7 beat Vanderbilt 36-23, 10-2 on the season. Tennessee's a team that's kind of being overshadowed right now in the SEC, kind of that sneaky dark horse team that could very well make a run in the college football playoff. 8-14, got SMU at 8. Mustangs beat Cal 38-6. Who would have seen this coming this season? SMU, what a year for them, 11-1. This is a really strong team. Got a chance against Clemson this week to clinch a college football playoff spot, and Obviously beat a really talented Clemson team. SMU's resume isn't very strong this year, so obviously we're going to learn a lot about them in this ACC championship game. And I mean, based on what we've seen the last few weeks, Mustangs are a for-real team. Really strong season for SMU. And Indiana at 9 beat Purdue 66. So that's the thing about the Hoosiers this year. I mean, you could say somewhat similar to SMU. They just haven't played a very strong schedule. Indiana obviously had their chance against Ohio State last week and lost to them, and it doesn't really help the Hoosiers that Ohio State proceeded to lose to Michigan. But, I mean, Indiana, though, this team has stated their case. They've been very dominant all season, except for that Ohio State game, an 11-1 year for the Hoosiers. I mean, this is still once we get to the college football playoff, we'll see who they face off against. But, I mean, obviously having kind of a weaker schedule in comparison to a lot of the teams that'll be in the college football playoff, that's what makes Indiana so interesting. Arizona State at 10, though. I mean, this is kind of a role reversal. They beat Arizona 49-7 this past week. You remember Arizona from last year, though. The Wildcats went on a huge run. They were almost unbeatable there in the last month or two of the season. That's kind of like Arizona State right now. This team is really on a run, 10-2. Two not good losses, that's for sure. But, I mean, Arizona State, the run that this team has had, how dominant they're playing right now, Arizona State is very dangerous. It feels like, I mean, I said this last year, if there was a 12-team playoff and Arizona got in, Arizona could have made a run for a national championship. Arizona State this season in a very similar situation to what we saw last year with the Wildcats. I could see ASU as a very dangerous team in the college football playoff, given the fact that they get in, and obviously it's winning in. If they can beat Iowa State this week, they're in the college football playoff, likely as a top 4. And then he got Alabama at number 11, beat Auburn 28-14, 9-3 on the season. Obviously a disappointing year for the Crimson Tide, 3 losses, but I mean, Alabama at this point, it feels like a 3-loss SEC team is going to get in. Just a matter of whether it's Alabama or Ole Miss. It feels like it's probably going to be the Crimson Tide. Obviously, things still need to happen here, but at least a halfway decent win for the Tide beating Auburn. And I mean, things are very interesting in the SEC to say the least here, because South Carolina, if you look at the Gamecocks, this team is between Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina. Gamecocks are playing the best out of the 3 right now. I feel comfortable in saying that. Problem is, Ole Miss or South Carolina lost to both Ole Miss and Alabama this season. The Ole Miss game especially was ugly. So Gamecocks 9-3, just beat Clemson 17-14. I mean, that's what's tough for the committee here, is because South Carolina is playing the best out of the 3. Do you put them in? Yeah, but you just can't, though, because they lost Alabama and Ole Miss previously. I've got Boise State at 14, though. This might be a bit arguable here. This is an 11-1 team, but my thing is, though, if you put Boise State against South Carolina, Ole Miss, or Alabama, this is, some would say, a tired argument with SEC teams. But the truth is, if you watch Alabama, you watch Ole Miss, and you watch South Carolina, and then you watch Boise State, I mean, Boise State's got Ashton Jeanty, and that's about it. I mean, I'm just being honest there. This defense, this is not a strong defensive team. They've got, obviously, a really good offense, but I do have questions about their defense, and obviously it seems like they're going to have a good chance here to show off what they can do in the college football playoff. But I mean, Boise State, though, if you compare them to what we've seen with some of these SEC teams, and in particular also Arizona State, I just feel like Boise State wouldn't beat any of the teams that I have in front of them at this current point, despite having what is one of the best players in the country, obviously, in Jeanty. But you're 15 through 21. Miami at 15 lost to Syracuse 38-42. Blew a 21-point lead there. And I mean, the Hurricanes went from looking like a true national contender to pretty much completely out of the college football playoff picture within just a couple of weeks. So, I mean, just a wild down the stretch it's been here. But for the Hurricanes, 10-2, a good season for them, but obviously a very disappointing November. Iowa State at 16, beat K-State 29-21. Kind of had a slump there in early November, but this team has come back, and they've got a chance to be in the college football playoff. Obviously, you have to beat Arizona State this week if they want a chance to be in, but I mean, I would not put it past the Cyclones. This is a very well-coached team that more than capable of making it to the playoff this year if they can once again just find a way against a red-hot Arizona State team. Clemson at 17, lost to South Carolina by 3, a 9-3 team. Still have a chance for the playoff, though, obviously, if they can take down SMU. And, I mean, SMU's a good team this year, but Clemson's been in these situations. They're experienced in the ACC, and honestly, I would not be surprised if Clemson found a way to be the Mustangs this upcoming week, despite SMU having a much better season to this point than Clemson. Then Colorado at 18. I do like the Buffs. I'm going to have them a bit higher, I think, than the committee will. But this team beat Oklahoma State 52-0. Obviously really tough for the Buffs because their loss to KU kept them out of the Big 12 championship game. Could have been in that with a huge chance for the college football playoff. But obviously that Kansas loss was really bad a couple of weeks ago. But the way this team responded, though, Oklahoma State, one of the most disappointing teams in the country this year. I would maybe argue that they were the most disappointing. 3-9 on the season, just a really bad year for the Cowboys. But Colorado, though, this team, I feel like, I mean, they've had it was kind of a slow start there, a bit of uncertainty, but this team has come alive down the stretch here despite that Kansas loss. And overall, I would say a successful season, especially if they can win their bowl game, get to 10 wins. Pretty good year for the Buffs. BYU at 19. I do have a 9-3 Colorado team over a 10-2 BYU. Cougars beat the Houston Cougars 30-18. So a nice win for BYU there. But, I mean, November wasn't very good to BYU, and that's why I have them below the Buffs. If you put Colorado versus BYU right now, I would probably say that Colorado would win that game. Illinois at 20, beat Northwestern by 10. 9-win season for the Illini. Good year for them. And Missouri at 21 after beating Arkansas by a touchdown. And then 22 through 25, Texas A&M at 22, lost to Texas by 10. A 4-loss team at 22. At this point, most of you are probably thinking I've got some kind of SEC bias, which that's just simply not true. I feel like if you watch Texas A&M, I mean, I know that they didn't have the best week, but the way that they've played down the stretch here has been really impressive, despite losing to Texas, who, by the way, is a really good team, obviously. But I mean, if you look at Texas A&M, I've got Memphis and UNLV at 24 and 25. UNLV is way lower in my rankings versus most everybody else's. And the reason for that is I truly believe that if you put Texas A&M and UNLV, for example, on a neutral field, Texas A&M's physicality is simply what's going to carry them over. I mean, Texas A&M is just a better team when it comes to that. And that's just, I mean, if you compare these SEC teams, they obviously have more losses than Boise State or Memphis or UNLV. But the thing is, though, I mean, once again, it just doesn't compare the talent of these SEC teams versus some of these group of fives. And I'm not saying Memphis or UNLV is bad. I'm just saying that in comparison to some of these other SEC teams that are just simply more talented, I mean, it makes a big difference. But Syracuse at 23, right in the middle there, they've really played well lately. Beat Miami 42-38, a 9-3 team, a strong finish, and a pretty good season going there for the Orange. And then Memphis and UNLV. Memphis beat Tulane 34-24, nice 10-win season for them. And UNLV, we'll see them against Boise State this week, a 10-win team this year. Really strong season for the Rebels. First 5 out, got Army at 26, Baylor at 27. Baylor is a team that's kind of flying under the radar. This is a 4-loss team, but they've won 6 straight. This is a team that's really played well here down the stretch. They're coming off of a huge win over a red-hot Kansas team, beat them 45-17. I mean, whoever has to play Baylor in a bowl game is going to have a tough time because the Bears have really come a long way this season. Then you got Duke, Louisiana, and Florida. Florida, 5-loss team, but a couple of really nice wins down the stretch as well. 3 straight wins, and 2 of them being over LSU and Ole Miss. And then we dropped out Tulane and Kansas State, both after taking losses this past week. So with that, that's going to wrap it up for today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this top 25. And I appreciate you guys watching as always. My name is Evan. This is All Sports Central. Stay tuned for more. We'll catch you on the next one.